The distress signal had barely faded from the Galactic Council chamber when the uneasy murmurs began. The Trivokian delegates' eyes shimmered with desperation. Our colonies are falling. We need help. High Chancellor Vurek shifted in his gravity-cushioned seat and said the words everyone feared. Send the humans. 3 days later, help arrived, if one could call it that. The dropship tore through the upper atmosphere like a bullet, its hull streaked with carbon and attitude. It landed hard, scorched earth coughing up around its retro thrusters. The Trivokian welcoming party, composed of nervous diplomats and one very old military historian, stood in a neat line, hands folded behind their spines, practicing their best non-threatening posture. The ramp hissed, split, and dropped. Out came 4 figures, each one more human than the last. Leading was a tall man in dusty armor, helmet under one arm, the other occupied by a half-eaten protein bar. He had a scar that sliced across one eyebrow, and he smiled like someone who had seen too much and decided to enjoy it anyway. Behind him ambled a short woman with a flamethrower slung across her back like a purse. She had dyed hair, bright green, and whistled a tune with zero rhythm but alarming confidence. The third was a medic, maybe. He wore a Red Cross patch, but was currently assembling something that looked suspiciously like a mine. His hands were stained with something red, and one could only hope it was paint. Last came a shadow with a rifle, silent, precise, unseen until she moved. Her armor bore no insignia. Her footsteps made none. The Trivokian commander, Brawl, stepped forward and bowed, hands raised in peaceful greeting. Welcome, honored allies. We are grateful for. Yeah, cool, said the leader, chewing. Where's the thing that needs dying? Commander Brawl blinked. You do not wish for a tactical briefing? Already got it on the ride down. Tall, mean chitin-covered bastards with biolasers. Eat everything. Big teeth. Got it. The woman with the flamethrower grinned. Bugs. Always bugs. I love bugs. Brawl took a careful step back. The humans spread out without further ceremony. The sniper vanished into the shadows before Brawl could even track the movement. The medic laid a charge at the base of a damaged building like he was decorating for a party. The flamethrower girl started humming, "Burn, baby, burn." Brawl turned to his aide, whispering in horror. They didn't even ask for housing coordinates, or supply lines, or planetary gravity specs. They requested a playlist. The aide replied, pale and shaking. Heavy metal. No other genre accepted. A low rumble shook the earth, distant, but growing. The enemy was near. Brawl tried again. Perhaps we could coordinate efforts. We have data on the creature's advance routes, tactical weaknesses. The leader looked over his shoulder. We don't do coordinate. We do annihilate. He pulled a weapon from his back. It was smiling. Not the weapon. The man. Brawl turned to the old historian, the only one not trembling. You've studied humans. Is this normal? The old one squinted. They're special. Once, I read they lit their own atmosphere on fire just to prove a point. Called it a test. Lost a few islands over it. Laughed. Brawl shuddered. The enemy came into view, towering insectoids, limbs jagged and armored, eyes glowing like embers. They charged over hills, shrieking. 12 of them. Maybe more. Trivokian soldiers froze. Some readied weapons with shaking hands. Most backed away. The humans didn't flinch. In fact, one of them, Flamethrower Girl, cheered. They're uglier than the last batch. Oh, I'm gonna name this one. The leader popped his neck, rolled his shoulders, and said, time to work. The next minute was a blur of fire and thunder. The sniper took the first shot, clean, silent, and so fast that the aliens had exploded before the sound reached Brawl's ears. The medic threw what was definitely not a medkit, more of a plasma grenade with first aid instructions on the side. Flamethrower Girl leapt forward with a whoop, dousing the front line in sheets of liquid fire, cackling as she spun like a demented ballerina. The leader walked calmly through the chaos, gunning down targets with brutal efficiency. He ducked under claws, barked out sarcastic commentary, and at one point used an alien corpse as a battering ram. The Trivokians didn't move. They couldn't. In less than 90 seconds, the horde was dead, burning, exploded, or simply missing large, critical pieces of anatomy. Silence fell. Only the crackle of residual fire and the cheerful hum of a human tune remained. The leader turned, smiling wider now. All right, that was the warm-up. Got anything bigger? Brawl finally found his voice. That was the scouting party. The main swarm arrives at dawn. Perfect, said the leader. We'll need more ammo.
And coffee.
Maybe a bigger flamethrower. The medic raised a bloodied hand. I can build one if we find a reactor. The sniper returned, ghost-like. Marked 3 nests. East Ridge. Looks fun. The flamethrower girl slapped her tank. Oh, I'm gonna roast me a queen. Commander Brawl, staring at the battlefield-turned bonfire, whispered, You're not like the others we've called. The human leader raised an eyebrow. You said send help. He stepped past the Trivokians, weapons still humming, boots crunching over alien bones. Well, he added, we are help. And just like that, they moved out again, into the smoke, into the fire, toward the sound of more screaming, like it was home. Behind them, the Trivokians watched, silent and stunned. Brawl exhaled, long and slow. We should have specified what kind of help. No one disagreed. The swarm arrived at dawn, just as promised. The Trivokian defense grid had already collapsed in 2 of the 3 sectors. Screaming poured over the comms like static. Bio-titans, 12 meters tall, armored in bone, moving with the precision of slaughterhouses, led the charge. Each step cracked the earth. Each roar bent trees. Brawl watched from the command post, his claws tightening around the railing. This is the end, he muttered. The human comms buzzed with laughter. Big boys are here, chirped the flamethrower girl. She called herself Vega now, after a dying star that had exploded impressively. Permission to get reckless? No such thing as permission, replied the leader, who finally shared his name, Captain Reeve. Just make sure someone gets it on camera. Vega hooped and ran toward the ridgeline with her flame unit blazing like a sunrise from hell. Brawl turned to his tactical display. The swarm's numbers were uncountable. They poured over the hills like a living flood, claws clicking, wings humming. At their center stood 3 bio-titans, each dripping acid and menace. A Trivokian lieutenant approached. Shall we sound evacuation? Brawl opened his mouth, then paused. On the far edge of the battlefield, something exploded in blue fire. The sniper had struck first. Her name, Brawl learned, was Ren. She did not speak unless necessary.
She did not miss.
The first Titan staggered. Its eye, the size of a hovercraft, vanished in a silent burst. Seconds later, a shockwave hit. The medic, Harris, had set mines in a predicted Titan path, and the lumbering creature found them like a gift from beneath. Half its body went up in a plume of black ichor. The Trivokian soldiers stared in disbelief. Captain Reeves stood on a broken watchtower, grinning like he was watching fireworks.
2 more to go.
Let's make it a set. The swarm reached the human lines. Except there were no lines. No trenches. No fortifications. Just 4 humans. And yet, nothing advanced past them. Vega launched herself into the horde, spinning, shouting names at every creature she burned. You're Dave. And you're Gloria. Gloria, you traitor. Burn, baby. Harris dragged a wounded Trivokian behind cover without breaking stride, applied something that hissed violently, and said, You'll either walk again or have superpowers. 50-50. Ren disappeared. Seconds later, one of the remaining Titans screamed and collapsed, half its skull caved in from an armor-piercing round. Reeve, meanwhile, didn't move.
He watched.
Calculated. Directed. Every time he barked a command, a monster died. Brawl activated a private comm, Captain Reeve. Your tactics are erratic. Illogical. You're improvising. That's the point, Reeve answered. They adapt to patterns. We don't give 'em any. We're not a line, Commander. We're a storm. But how are you coordinating? Instinct. Training. Trauma bonding. Mostly caffeine. A winged variant dove toward Reeve. He didn't flinch. Ren's bullet clipped its wing, Vega's fire caught its back, and Harris's explosive sent it crashing into the swarm like a meteor. 3 humans. 1 sniper shot. 1 fire blast. 1 grenade. 1 dead flyer. The Trivokians began cheering. The last Bio-Titan roared and charged. It had learned. It ignored the fire. Dodged the mines. Swatted at the air to keep Ren's shots erratic. Reeve jumped from the watchtower. Mid-air, he drew 2 pistols, strange, ugly things covered in tally marks. He hit the Titan's eye as he fell, turned in the air, and landed on its snout like a war god from a lost age. It howled. Reeve fired again, planting something metallic that glowed red. Then he leapt off. The device beeped once. The Titans had vanished in a column of smoke. It stood there for a second, confused, almost, then toppled, shaking the ground like a dying world. Silence. The swarm faltered, then broke. The chittering horde scattered, directionless, leaderless, terrified. Vega raised her arms. That's right. Run, you crunchy cowards. Bral slumped back in his seat, legs shaking. They're retreating. No, said his aide. They're fleeing. The Trivokian army, what was left of it, emerged from the bunkers, awe etched into every face. They had witnessed something they didn't understand, couldn't explain, but instinctively respected. Reeve dusted off his armor and walked up to Bral. His face was smudged, but he looked energized. So, he said, what's next? Bral blinked. Next? That was the main wave. Yeah, but they'll regroup. Bugs always do. We've got maybe a day before round 2. So, you got any liquor? I'm out. Bral didn't respond. Reeve looked back at his team. Vega was doing an interpretive victory dance around a still-burning corpse. Harris was arguing with Ren about whether or not a Titan tooth would make a good can opener. Reeve sighed contentedly. God, I love fieldwork. Bral finally spoke. We were not prepared for your kind of help. Reeve smiled, teeth white against the dirt. No one ever is. But it works. He turned to leave, then paused. By the way, your forward bunkers?
Gone.
Your southern ridge? Let's call it renovated. And your comms tower might be a pile of sizzling scrap. Bral stared. You destroyed our infrastructure. To save your species. Priorities, Commander. Reeve clapped him on the back. Don't worry. We're just getting started. He walked away, humming. Behind him, the battlefield smoked, sizzled, and twitched. And somewhere, out beyond the burning ridge, something screamed again. Nightfall brought no peace. The stars above blinked, uncaring, while below, the charred earth groaned. Trivokian drones scanned the battlefield, struggling to catalog the wreckage. They found smoking husks, shredded chitin, splattered acid, and broken weapons, alien and otherwise. What they didn't find was rest. Captain Reeve stood at the edge of a shattered ridge, staring into the darkness. He hadn't slept. None of them had. The swarm wasn't gone. Just wounded. And wounded beasts always came back meaner. Vega sat cross-legged nearby, fixing her flamethrower with the same care someone might reserve for a pet. She hummed off-key, a wrench in one hand, a sandwich in the other. Occasionally, she giggled. Harris moved between wounded Trivokians, checking pulses and muttering things like, if it hurts, that means you're not dead, or, good news, your liver's not essential. Well, not both of them. Ren was invisible again. No one asked where she went. When she returned, it was usually with enemy intel or body parts. Bral approached cautiously, still wary, still unsure if these humans were humanity's best or its worst. Maybe both. We've picked up movement, he said. More than before.
Faster.
Smarter. They're adapting. Reeve didn't flinch.
Good.
So are we. They've started burrowing under our defenses, Bral continued. Avoiding direct conflict. They're trying to outmaneuver you. They won't, but they might succeed. Reeve finally turned, eyes hard but not cruel. They're scared. That's what animals do when cornered. They try something desperate. You don't counter that with walls. You counter it with insanity. Vega looked up, beaming. Did someone say insanity? Because I just upgraded the flamer with a plasma coil. Might explode. Probably will. Wanna see? Brawl stepped back instinctively. Reeve nodded toward her. That's the point. Fear doesn't respect diplomacy. It respects madness. Fear looks at Vega and thinks, nope, not today. A high-pitched alarm echoed from the southern trench. A moment later, the ground trembled. Harris ran past, holding a half-charged defibrillator in one hand and a crowbar in the other. Reeve? We got worms. The earth split open like a yawning mouth. From the breach came something monstrous, no longer insectoid, but a twisted fusion of flesh, metal, and acid. An evolutionary jump. A response to the humans. Guess they learned, Reeve muttered. The new beast, spined, serpentine, drooling molten resin, slithered toward the trench, snapping defensive turrets in half. Trivokians fled in disarray. Reeve didn't run. Vega. Roast it. Been waiting all day. She leapt forward, weapon igniting with a noise that resembled laughter and thunder combined. Blue flame roared across the beast's hide, boiling its outer shell. It screamed and kept coming. Vega blinked. Okay. Tough love, huh? The worm reared back, jaws opening, revealing rows of jagged barbs.
It spat acid.
Vega barely rolled away, a sizzle marking the place she'd stood. Reeve barked into his comm Ren. Eye socket.
Top left.
Hit it. No reply. Just a flash. The worm's shriek turned into a gargle as something pierced its head, a whisper-fast shot from nowhere. It thrashed, tail lashing. Buildings crumbled. Reeve charged forward, Harris beside him, both weaving through the chaos like it was choreography. Distract it, Reeve shouted. Harris pulled a small device from his belt, slapped it onto a rock, and kicked it toward the beast. It blinked twice, beeped, and projected a hologram of Vega doing cartwheels while flipping off the monster. The worm lunged. Reeve jumped, drove a spike grenade into its mouth, and launched himself off its snout mid-roar. The explosion sent up a column of fire visible for miles. When the smoke cleared, the worm twitched, then collapsed. Acid leaked from every crack. The ground hissed. Vega, soot-covered but smiling, walked past its corpse and patted Reeve on the back.
See?
Insanity works. Brawl arrived with his guards, panting. What was that thing? Evolution, Reeve said. Which means the next one's worse. Then we are doomed. No, Reeve said, his voice low. Now it's a real fight. That night, the humans didn't rest. They rebuilt, repurposed. Harris turned alien limbs into makeshift traps. Vega calibrated the flamethrower with stolen power cores. Reeve plotted attack routes on a napkin. Ren returned with a severed tongue and said, "They're nesting near the fault line." The Trivokians watched, stunned. These weren't soldiers. They were something else. Something terrifying, effective, and for the first time in this war, hopeful. Brawl sat beside Reeve as dawn approached. The sky was stained orange. Another wave was coming. "You think we'll win?" he asked quietly. "No," Reeve said. Brawl blinked. "We don't think about winning. We just think about surviving harder than the enemy." Then the earth trembled again. Reeve stood. His team followed. No hesitation. No fear. Vega smiled and whispered, "Round 3." And the fire began again.